My name is Ian Walsh, and this is Masters of the Market. As you guys know, as we do on a Friday blast out, we get some of the biggest, most influential players in our space and surrounding. And the individual that we have today is Dan Zitofsky from Zitofsky Capital Management. I appreciate you coming on, Dan. Thank you very much for taking some time out.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. So for those that do or don't know Dan, it's important to me that you guys understand that we deal with players that move the markets and that have a huge pulse on it. The reason I do it from a lender's perspective is because it helps me keep a good pulse on, if I have enough people around in these interviews giving me different information that move hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate combined, or even billions of dollars, it gives a really nice pulse on the market. And Dan is one of those guys that takes a very high level overview. Just some of his credentials that for those watching or listening, Dan has, let's start with the turnkey investments. He's done over 200 turnkey, bought and sold over 200 turnkey investments to only 18 clients. And now I say only 18, meaning he has a proven commodity in place to investors that are making money on it. So they're happy and they're coming back, which is really, Dan's very proud of that because it's hard. It's hard to do that and accomplish that kind of end product. Dan has also raised over $15 million in capital to do transactions, 600 flips he's done, and over 1,000 transactions to date. You have moved a lot of product and dealt with a lot of different deals, Dan, and so it's really important to me to get to know you, and hopefully the people can pick up a lot of information, because you also do a lot of the guys that I interview, which are fantastic individuals, but they don't deal in the non-traditional, they're in the more traditional investing world, but you do some stuff that I've never dove into, and I don't intend to. I'm not going to be a competition anytime soon, but I find it very interesting, to be honest. So one thing, and this is for George Beatty, because George has been asking me for this, and he wants to know, how do people identify emerging markets, meaning a market that today, people don't have the vision or understanding as to why tomorrow that is going to be the hottest market, how to time it, how to get in before everybody knows about it and it's overpriced. So Dan, with some of your experience, I'm just going to start emerging markets. Talk to us. Tell us what we should know, or without giving, I guess, everything away, or maybe give it away. I mean, go ahead.
I give it away. It doesn't matter.
Sure, I was going to say, does it really matter, right?
Yeah, I'm an abundance guy. I don't ever believe in competition. I believe we should all work together. But anyway, an emerging market, I've always been doing this business 27 years. I've always been involved in emerging markets, from the late 90s to being out in Arizona when people told me I was nuts for being out there when it was tumbleweed, and just seeing the market bulge out from the LA market coming into Arizona. We were picking up a lot of land at that point, knowing that, Motorola was going there. They were building a new stadium. They were doing 3 new highways that were coming to fruition. And it's doing a lot of research and keeping your hand on the pulse of everything that's going on with Economic Development Corp, Chamber of Commerce, seeing what, job growth is happening. You can't just be in the business and show up at RIA meetings and think, everybody else is doing, so I want to do it. There's certain markets I invest in, like, Ohio, Tennessee. We're jumping big into markets in Alabama right now. Why is, you have Fortune 500 companies there. For instance, we'll take Cleveland. You have 10 of the Fortune 500 companies there. You have the Cleveland Clinic growing like leaps and bounds. You have infrastructure being put in. Downtown city has all been revitalized. Old properties are being imploded and taken down within months, and they're putting mansions up next to them. A lot of colleges there. So you want to look at markets like that and see what's happening. You also want to look at employment rates, crime rates, vacancy rates. For instance, at Cleveland, I think, for instance, is about a 97% occupancy rate. It's a very good market. Also, landlord-friendly markets. You're going to go to a market where it takes 9 to 12 months to evict somebody. And then you have to look at, class buildings, whether you're A, being the best, and D, being the worst areas. Where do you need to be? Now, there's a lot of investors that are pure cash flow investors and pure yield players. Well, they'll buy in the Class D neighborhoods because they make a lot of money, but their average length of tenant is, 6 to 9 months, and they're stealing the copper and stealing the HVAC system self as scrap. We're not looking to do that. We look to be in a Class B to C type area, blue-collar workers, pride of ownership. There's a lot of jobs there, so it's not inducive on one industry. I mean, you saw what happened in Detroit when the auto industry went down. I mean, town was a ghost town. Silicon Valley, when the stock market, when the dot-com bubble crashed, became a ghost town. You don't want to be in markets like that. You don't want to be in these cyclical markets like the New Yorks, the Chicagos, Seattles, California. They're very up and down. I mean, Miami, you see a 60% drop in a year in a town like Miami. You could also be on that upswing. I don't like to play those upswings or downswings. There's a pendulum when you have buyers and sellers. There's a seller market 1 and 2 and a buyer 1 and 2. So you got to be buying and selling at the right time. But even during the late 2000s, when 2008, 9, when everybody lost everything they had, on paper we didn't lose more than 4% on our market because we were in a market that they still needed housing. There was not an influx of doors available, so there was not a ton of rentals. So people still needed to rent properties, and they couldn't get mortgages, so we were in the right spot at the right time. You also don't want to follow what everybody else is doing. I see it now. Everyone jumped in multis a couple of years ago. I sold some of our stuff off at that time. We were buying them at 9s and 10 caps, and we were selling them at 6 caps. People are in the 6 caps, and you see vacancies. If you go into town, you see free rent available. You just got to be careful. There's still good deals out there, but you got to find them. Now, non-traditional ways we find our deals. We don't just find them, obviously, from realtors. Very tough to find deals like that. We either find them from distressed sellers, like most people do. We do a lot of tax liens. I mean, there's certain states and counties you can and can't do them. We do liens. We don't do too much in tax deeds, but you need to learn the difference of each. There's a redemption period. There's interest. So someone asked me today about a redemption period. Aren't you scared of a redemption period? I said, not really, because if they redeem, they pay me 18% interest. How bad is that? It's not the worst thing in the world.
Nah, that's a good deal. Yeah.
You just have to understand if you're in Georgia, there's a redemption period where they pay 32%. So you got to understand where you're in, what market you're in. You need to do your research, and that's the emerging market. So basically, I think I spread it out a little bit more on this interview, what an emerging market is. But ultimately, the biggest thing I want to see is job growth in that area. Okay. I want to see what companies are there. I want to make sure it's not all auto industry. I want to make sure there's a blend. There's banks, there's healthcare, there's aerospace, there's technology, there's auto. So if any industry takes a hit, there's still a need for jobs out there. I want to make sure that the rents, the market rents, cover what we need to be covered. I want to make sure that leveraged money that our investors are still making, 8 to 13% in that range, being in a Class B to C type neighborhood. I don't want to go into the ghetto neighborhoods. I want to stay in quality neighborhoods where there's pride of ownership. And there's investors out there that just like the low-end areas. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a different market. It's not the game we play. There's no right or wrong. It's just not what we choose to play in. So look what's happening with Economic Development Corp. They'll give you a lot of information. Get to a Chamber of Commerce meeting. You'll hear what's going on. Read the newspaper. When you go to those markets, the biggest thing I do is I set up teams in those markets. And when I say teams, interview 3 property managers. Meet with 3 property managers. They'll give you everything you need to know alone, just them. Meet with a couple of realtors. Meet with some contractors. Get 1 or 2 or 3 properties and split them up between the 3 property managers, see who you like better. They'll tell you what areas you want to be in. They'll tell you what the going rents are. They'll tell you what the values are. And they'll tell you what type of clientele and where they work and what they do and, what's happening in the industry. They know better than anybody. They should. And that's how you really build your emerging market. And once you have it down pat, now your investors will start following you. And they'll start trusting you to be that point person in that area. Because they know, for us, they know we're due diligence freaks. So they know that we're willing to actually go out there. We're willing to use our own money first before we make them spend any money on properties. And then what we'll do is we'll just take down a lot of non-performing notes, tax liens, sell the distressed properties. And if we can get some from realtors, that's great as well.
So here's what I'm picturing in your scenario. You have a ton of information in front of you that you, from experience, can cut through very quickly and decide, okay, this is an emerging market, right? But if I'm not you and I haven't been doing this, I got a billion cities in this, I'm able to rule out the major ones, the boom and bust cities, the ones that are solely dependent on certain economies, right? That's dangerous. All your eggs are in one basket. Right. I'm with you there. And that makes a lot of sense, actually. In fact, I hope everybody can draw a logical conclusion on that to not be in those areas. But that also leaves a ton of other cities and a ton of other, why Cleveland? Why did this specifically shortcut to your radar, right? I'm sure if you took all the time in the world and studied all those elements that you just went over, and I know a lot of it is experience and feel and so forth and understanding of the areas, but you can't go to the Chamber of Commerce for every city in the country. How did you isolate maybe Alabama or Cleveland and say, these are the areas how did I narrow it down to say 20 places and say, I'm going to go visit these and figure these places out?
Well, for me, it started off, and everybody has a different goal in mind. For me, I'd say I'm going to live on the East Coast. I wanted to be an East Coast investor. I was tired of traveling to, which great market is Arizona. I was tired of traveling there. I didn't want to get on a plane and start going to Texas. It's, to me, East Coast is easy. If I could be there in a day and be home in a day, that's great. Then I looked at, market rents in an area. I know what I want to make. At the time, I did a lot of work in Dayton. I did some work in Columbus. So I was kind of in the Ohio area anyway. Mm-hmm. And I saw where the market was moving. I saw what was happening in the market. I saw the Cleveland Clinic, just by being out there, was expanding by leaps and bounds. I saw companies moving into that Cleveland market. I saw healthcare becoming big out there. I saw the cost of living was still very, very economical in that area, and the market itself was changing. So being out there, if you don't know an area, first thing you have to do is figure out what areas would be acceptable to you. If I turn around right now and I said, okay, I want to go to North Dakota. Well, I've never done anything in North Dakota. I would look at what the market looks like, what the average price of houses are there, what the population is. You want to make sure there's a population. You don't want to be in the rural areas where there's no population out there. There's 2,000 people that live in an area, and they don't need housing. You want to be in a population with at least 100,000 people. Okay. People need housing. So it's very easy to look up, population. Then you want to look up, at that point, what big companies are in that area. So you can look at Fortune 500 lists of where companies are located. Mm. You could just do a search. What companies are located in, Cleveland, Ohio, Memphis, Tennessee, Birmingham, Alabama, those kind of markets, and you'll see what companies are there. And then you look at what the going rents are for in that area. Okay, so now you have everything kind of put together, at least as an overview. And then I recommend, I get down there, so a lot of my investors don't go down there. I have some CEOs of companies, I have some foreign investors, I have some guys from California, I have people from Canada right now, I have somebody from Greece. So I have investors, Delaware, Philadelphia, New York, that they're not going to get on a plane and go down there. We've worked so long. So they'll buy properties from us pretty much sight unseen, which if you're first starting out, you might want to get on a plane, go out there, like I said, meet with property managers, get it, drive around the neighborhood, look at that neighborhood. That's kind of how I would recommend doing that if you've never done it. And that's how I would do it in any market. It's very easy to look up the census of that market. I want to see, like I said, 100,000 people or more in that area before I'm investing in that area. I don't want to do it in really small towns where there's no need for housing. That's the biggest thing on a turnkey rental is there a need for housing? Even into my non-performing notes. When I have a non-performing note, one of my exit strategies, it has to make sense as a rental property. If it doesn't make sense as a rental property, it's not checked on my list. If it meets 8 other exit strategies, I still won't do it because there's too many deals out there for me. So those are the kind of things you want to look at, and then just check your boxes, your comfort level. There's some people that don't mind getting on a plane. I used to do it. I used to go to Arizona every 3 weeks and deal with multiple properties. I'm tired. I don't want to sit on a plane back and forth. But it's a great market for the people that are out there.
I get it. You've become very, very efficient over your years of investing. So I got two more major things to hit on. One, which was interesting when you and I had a conversation prior, which we both talked about Pittsburgh, because I'm familiar with Pittsburgh. You know Pittsburgh. And that kind of gave me an idea of an understanding as to like what you look for in terms of a market, right? Because you said, no, that ship has sailed in terms of what you look for. You said the boom already happened. So if you were to get in now, you'd be really trying to squeeze blood from a stone for what you try to do. And that, because I'm very familiar with the Pittsburgh market over the past 15 years, I watched it do all the things you just said. And now I would say, yeah, I mean, it's everything you just said is true and it's too high. How do you check in your checks and balances to make sure you're not on the top side of a boom? Like how do you make sure you didn't jump into Pittsburgh because it lined up correctly and it took that whole path and that trajectory 10 years ago? So how do you make sure you time yourself getting in or near the bottom and out near the top? How do you look at that and make sure when you come into the cycle of a city that you're in the right timing of it?
Okay, biggest thing for me is I want to make sure that I'll look at a history of comps. I'll look at comps in that area, and I'll see what's happening with the comps. Where are we priced at? Are we priced on the pendulum at a sell point at this point? So is everybody looking to sell and take their money and run? I don't want to be in that sell point. I want to be in the buyers one. Or buyers one is great. That's at the bottom, right when it's starting to peak. Buyers two is kind of towards the top, where at the end. I also look at, I compare it. So not necessarily, and it depends on every investor's goals. Some investors might be in the deal for tax reasons, tax benefits. Some might be because they want to play the appreciation game, which is dangerous. Because there's no, I'm going to go where I want to get double-digit yields or close to it in an emerging market and stable market. So if I go to Pittsburgh right now, I'm not going to find properties in a class B to C type neighborhood getting me those kind of returns. It's going to be, you know, your yields are going to be 5-6%, and you're at the top of the cycle. Where if you look at the comps in the area, you're at the top 10% of the market, and all it could do at this point is you're basing it on possible appreciation, but it's probably going to come down or stabilize. So if that's the only place you can invest your money in, there's a shot, but there's all the markets for me to invest my money in. So I feel bad that when people are only in one market, they say, well, I just want to stay in my home market. Well, they're kind of stuck by the market cycles, and they can only invest at certain times, and they have to move around at different times. At any market, at any given time, even in Pittsburgh, you could find yourself a good deal. It's going to be that much harder. And when we're sitting on a lot of investors want to invest with us because we do a very good job for them, we have to get their money in play, as you know.
Yeah, of course. So everybody needs, so from the emerging market perspective, and I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you. Everybody needs to listen to this interview, I think 5 to 10 times, because there was a whole lot of information in there, honestly, that some of it, you know, you could tell in some of the things you said, there was, you know, 100 instances of experience that kind of came into that one comment. So it's worth renoting this if you're taking notes on it. But I want to also go one other place with you, which was really enlightening when we sat down. You were extremely passionate about this too when we met, which was you shifted your gears into, and it kind of comes back to flying into Arizona and just saying, I don't want to do that anymore. That's not what I want to do. You shifted gears mentally into allocating your time and efficiency versus, you know, working around the clock to squeeze an extra buck out. Can you go out into that a little bit? Because I think there's a lot of guys in that grind mode, in that, you know, badge of honor because I'm working 24 hours a day mode, when that's not the most efficient way to get the most out of life. But it takes a lot of time to get there, right? It takes the experience of maybe getting your hands on everything and then saying, whoa, is this what I want? So if you don't mind, would you dabble into that a little bit?
That's my passion. In fact, I speak nationwide about this. Every event I speak at, I speak about lifestyle now. When I usually get up, the first question I ask the audience is, I said, how many deals are you looking to do? And everyone's popping their hand up. I want to do 100. I want to make this much money this year. And when I break it down, I think I did it at an event you might have been at. I broke it down. I asked, well, why do you want to do so many deals? They said, well, I want to make a certain amount of money. When I asked, why do you want to make a certain amount of money? It's because I want to quit my job. Well, why do you want to quit your job? Because I want to spend more time with my family and my friends doing what I want to do when I want to do it. They don't realize taking on 100 deals at a time, they're going to work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, have nothing but stress, not want to do anything with their family. So they're really not living the lifestyle they're really talking about. And I got to say, about 3 or 4, almost 4 years ago now, I really changed everything around. I went from, you know, buying every toy out there, and I laugh because I watch people on Facebook and they put these expensive cars or these expensive watches and boats and whatever they put on there, and they think that's a sign of success. But they're grinding. They're up at 4 in the morning and they're going to sleep at 2 in the morning, and they're up, and their answer is, who's grinding, who's working hard? And I just, you know, in the beginning, yes, you have to work hard. You have to get a business base going. But the ultimate goal for us has really been to the point of, you know, we don't need to take on every deal. We need to learn to live passively, create wealth long term. And to me, wealth is not just money. It's given me, you know, I could say now we probably make less money than we made years ago, but we're so much more happy. We have so much more time on our hands to do things like, you know, coach our kids, you know, sports game, to go. I was able to go on vacation when my kids were off school last week. I'm able to go away all summer, either to, you know, Europe or the beach or ride the boat or whatever it is, hang out with my friends. And that's what it's about for me. So what turnkey rentals has allowed me to do so much more than just have rental properties. But you know, it's turned into, from rental properties to selling them to investors, holding notes on some of them, creating that note and passive income for myself. So I become the bank. So everything with me is turned into, you know, instead of doing hundreds of flips like I used to do, we used to do 30 to 40 flips every year for 7 years straight. Mm. And man, I was telling you, I was going, you know, I was stressed out. I was dealing with contractors, dealing with money investors. I was dealing with realtors. I was dealing with appraisers. I was dealing with inspectors. And, you know, I'd make my $30,000, $40,000 a flip. And then, you know, Uncle Sam would take 40% of that. So I really wasn't making that much. They were making what I was making. I was putting all the time in. So at the end of the year, we were making a ton of money, but I was miserable. And I thought at the time, I said, you know, I was doing all this for everybody else to make everyone else happy. And the bottom line is the family turn around. They're like, well, you're never home, so we're not happy anyway. Mm. So, you know, what I could put out there, and that's why I shifted gears years ago, and that's why I don't get on a plane and I don't go to Arizona to do deals. And I could do a ton of deals there. I still have a team out there that could find me foreclosures. I could probably buy 10, 15 foreclosures every single day if I wanted to. But now I got to manage those foreclosures. I got to manage the contractors. I got to do I just don't want to do it. So now I turned everything I do, and I teach everyone when I speak. I teach you how to create wealth long-term passively by, turning everything from, whether it's building up a couple of turnkey rentals and creating that. I know some people say, well, turnkey rentals, you really don't make money because all you're doing is paying for repairs and you're paying for vacancies. And that goes back to an earlier interview you and I have done about putting a team in place, the right team in place, trusting the people you're with. And ultimately, you buy those rentals now, 10 years down the road, maybe when you retire, now you can sell them off to another investor and hold a note for them. So you don't have to take the cash and pay tax on it. You hold a note and you're doing it in a stepping stone. So that's really near and dear, true to my heart. I love teaching about lifestyle now rather than teaching about how to do a deal. That's really where my passion is and what I speak about. And everything I do is based on creating wealth passively. From the notes is I'm being the bank. Turnkey rentals, I'm passively making money on those. Tax liens, I turn those into rentals. I make money on those passively. As far as flips, we do usually 2 to 3 flips a year. That's about as much as we do. And our net on a flip is a lot more than it used to be. And I partner with contractors that I trust on those flips. I'm really just overseeing them and partnering with them. So I'm really not involved in the minutia every day with those. So that's really where my passion has gone. And I'm glad it extruded that day when we spoke, because that's really what comes across.
And I get it. So you found, correct me if I'm wrong, but you found the ultimate currency, which is time, not money. Is that fair to say in its own right?
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people like to say time is money, but as I've grown in business and so forth and understood, like, people say that with a very light feel to it. Sounds like a fun business saying, but I've always said in real estate, and I go back to your watches comment, but in real estate, you find guys, and Wall Street as well, really understanding time is money. And I usually tell people when somebody has a Rolex on, for whatever reason, that you usually look. You could wear sweatpants and have a beat up Volvo, but if you have a Rolex on, and I don't take it as a status symbol so much as I'm saying, I like to think that somebody's saying, I have a huge value of time. I place the most value on time. So I don't actually look at it as a status symbol. So,
every guy has their itch. Mine was always watches. I'm wearing a U-Low. But I don't buy this anymore. This was bought before. I do drive a nice car, but the car is getting up there in years. But I normally would have traded that car in, and I would have bought another one for 150 grand more just to show I'm successful. But honestly, now I'm not keeping up with the Joneses. I can care less. I got people asking me all the time, what in the world are you doing that you can travel 2-3 months at a time? I can get on a plane. I love speaking nationally. I love coaching. Yeah. I love almost being like a life coach and life speaker out there, because I've lived it. I've lived through, a lot of good and a lot of bad times, and I've come through it. And I was not one of these guys that was born into the business. It was very tough when I started, and I made it happen. And I made a lot of money. Unfortunately, I made it when I was young, so I didn't know what to do with it. And I spent like crazy, and thank God I took a lot of that money and invested in real estate, and that's what's made me who I am today. But, I didn't go out there and buy Ferraris and Bentleys and think that's a sign of success, because, they say once you get in those, it's great, but once it loses that, I heard these guys talking about how it loses its giggle after a while. Get in a car and it loses its giggle, it doesn't take very long for that to happen. But when you can get out there and you can go, coach your kids, sports team, or go on vacation with your family, that giggle never goes away. So that's what it's all about. It's not about impressing everybody else out there. It's not about, wearing the most, and, we have it, we've done it, I got it out of my system, but I wish I learned a lot, when I was a lot younger. I wish I learned these rules of life a lot younger. I would have been this way a lot further, ahead. But I'm blessed that the last, like I said, 3-4 years we've been able to do this, and it just keeps getting better for us and better for us. And what we're doing now is we've been lucky enough to be able to help other people. This summer alone we retired 3 people that were 2 women and 1 guy. Allowing them one stay home with her kids instead of putting them in daycare. One guy was able to retire and stay home with his wife, whoever retired. So those kind of things are what really we love to do. We love to show other people the way to do it and get them there and put them on a course. And like I said, once they start buying those properties, we can get them on the course to where they want to be. But everyone needs to have a goal, and their goal needs to have a reason, a why, and it has to have a life vision. A goal that just, I want to do 100 properties this year with no life vision doesn't make any sense at all.
I love it. I love it. So I guess what we'll do is we'll wrap up. I want people to know, though, this is one of the cooler interviews that I've certainly done in terms of the depth of like why nobody really has asked or answered, more so asked why we all do this, right, to begin with. And that's a really cool thing that you ask, whether it's in a room or on this interview, and other people can sit back and say, hey, wait a minute, that's a really good question. So if I wanted to contact Dan, what's the easiest way to do it for everybody watching, or do you not want everybody to contact you? It's up to you, but if they were to, how would they do that?
Contact me. You can either go to our site and hit the contact us button, which is www.zitofskycapitalmanagement.com, and spell Zitofsky, capitalmanagement.com. Or you can email me, dan@zitofskycapitalmanagement.com. And like I said, I do travel a lot, but I do try to get back to everybody pretty timely, if I could. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. As everybody knows, I'm Ian Walsh of Hard Money Bankers. You can find us Ian@hardmoneybankers.com or IAN on Walsh on Facebook. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it, man.
My pleasure.